Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Kevin Moore Show. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Lorie Eve Dechar. Now, Lorie uses a unique approach to the practice of traditional Chinese medicine, which emerges from her commitment to discovering a healthier and more integrated way for herself and other human beings to live on planet Earth. Now, her background includes a master's degree in acupuncture and training in archetypal psychology. Now, Lorie has worked for over 3 decades to integrate the principles and practice of Chinese medicine with Western depth psychology to create alchemical healing, a therapeutic modality directly focused on the psycho-spiritual and soul issues of our time. Lorie Eve Dechar, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Kevin.
It's my pleasure to have you on, Lorie. We're going to discuss your work, and of course, this is based on your book, The Alchemy of Inner Work, a guide for turning illness and suffering into true health and well-being. And when I first came across this book, I thought, well, I need to do a little bit more looking into this subject. And when I started looking into you, I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. There's so much great information here to share with people. So my first question is, how long have you been practicing this for?
Well, that's such a great question. The easy, obvious answer is I've been practicing Chinese medicine, alchemy, depth psychology work for 35 years. But the truth is, I'm 68 now, and I think I started in utero.
Yeah, I think yeah. From a
I really do.
yeah.
I think I came in and like my North Star said, go heal this place. There's a lot of mess here. Figure it out. So I've been trying to figure it out since I was very, very little, as I think many of us really are, right?
Absolutely. And if you were to
Yeah.
sum up your work, what is the most important message of your work and what is your work very quickly?
Very quickly. Okay. So when I think about what I most care about, as I said, it hasn't changed since I was very young. What I most care about is what people, I think the best word for it is the soul. So that word is used so widely, and in the West, we hardly even know what it is. The Chinese have a much clearer way of talking about it, but the soul is, for me, it's what makes us human. It's what brings the divine down into the world so we can know it. It's the difference between the divine that's up there far away that we can't really ever touch, and how spirit comes down into the world here now in our lives. That's the soul. And ever since I was a kid, little, I was like, people aren't caring for that. People, even growing up when I did in the late 50s and 60s, was already materialism and, just tearing apart the natural world and not caring for that subtle experience of what life is. So that's what my work is. My work is tending that domain.
And how do you do that? By integrating what with what?
The specifics of my work are I'm trained as an acupuncturist in a form of acupuncture called 5-element acupuncture. There are many styles. People don't need to know about all the styles and all the who's right and who's wrong and who does what, like in any field. But the field that I was drawn to is 5-element because we're looking at the elements of the natural world and how they move through human beings. So that's one important stream of my work. The other stream of my work comes from what's called depth psychology. It was developed by C.G. Jung, a Swiss psychoanalyst, who believed, unlike many psychotherapists, that human beings have an innate divinity inside of them. And our work is really to find that spark and bring it to life. That was Jung's very special gift. And it's exactly what the Chinese believed. So when I discovered that, I was like, bingo, these two go together. They give me tools to work on the body, on what we call the psyche or soul, the mind, the emotions. And they both have roots in the tradition we call alchemy. So so are my mainstreams: depth psychology, Chinese medicine, and then the alchemical traditions.
Wonderful. Okay, and you've got a master's as well, and that's in.
I have a master's actually in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And as I told you when we spoke earlier, I have an undergraduate degree, like in French literature and English literature, which is kind of funny. But in the end, even though I became a healer, I used my writing as a way to really bring the wisdom of these traditions out to the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, even translating that into French, which I think you did you not, with your books?
I didn't translate it into French, but what I do is I take Chinese words and really sit in them with them and bring the deeper meaning of these Chinese words into English, which really you have to be able to talk poetry in order to do that, because Chinese isn't a linear language. And so bringing the ideas from Chinese into English has been one of my passions.
Wow, I got that completely wrong. I mean, I thought French was difficult, but you've translated some stuff from Chinese. Gosh, how long did it take you to
Yes,
learn that language or parts of it?
many years, many years, many years. It's just going in and in and in. I've been at it for many decades.
How many times
So
have you been to China then?
I've actually never been to modern China. Where I go is the China of the ancients. You know, people ask me would I like to go to China, and there are parts of China that I would love to visit, and there are hidden teachers in parts of China that are very difficult to get to. But the China of now is not the China that is my domain. The philosophies that are my passion come from 2,000 years ago, and I go there regularly in my imagination, but not by airplane.
Absolutely. And where is the old Chinese sort of sacred sort of material in a sense? You know, the texts that date back 2,000 years. I mean, obviously like, there's a lot online, but where is it passed on? Is there sort of books based on this information?
Yeah, it's beautiful. So, Kevin, what happened was when the communists took over China, as people know, there was a lot of getting rid of the old. Mao Zedong's idea was spirituality was not the world he wanted China to be part of. So he actually, many of the really the wisdom teachers, the lineage holders, either left China or ended up in work camps or prisons. And it's a really, really sad part of Chinese history. In fact, Mao called acupuncture the dung heap of China. But the tricky thing was in the 60s, he came to realize it wasn't such a dung heap, because he realized that Chinese medicine was a way to treat thousands and thousands of people easily, economically, the basic illnesses that people were experiencing. And they call that barefoot doctor medicine. But in barefoot doctor, they took out all the mystical, magical, spiritual parts of the medicine. They just expunged it from the text.
But how did it continue?
So that's the good story. There were Jesuit priests, amazingly. One of my teachers, his name is Claude Lahr. He's passed on. He was a Jesuit in China, and he was dedicated to translating. He was a sinologist, a China scholar. He found these texts and brought them to the West. And I was so fortunate to have the opportunity to study with him early on.
And you met him in the 70s?
Yes, Claude Lahr, Père Lahr, yes. And the woman who worked with him, Elizabeth Rochat de la Vallée, is still translating. There are other translators who managed to get a hold of these texts and say, wow, this is a whole other world than what we're calling acupuncture or barefoot doctor system. Those are the texts that I study, the alchemical texts, the mystical texts.
Excellent. Okay. And people can find those online nowadays?
You can find them. They're difficult. Takes a long time to understand them. But if someone is really interested and gets excited by hearing about this, there's a text called The Secret of the Golden Flower, translated by a guy named Richard Wilhelm, who also, by the way, translated the I Ching, which is a book more people know about. But The Secret of the Golden Flower is a wonderful alchemical text, and it carries all of that flavor, that mystery. And in fact, it took me many years to even begin to crack the code of that text. But when I finally got it, it's one of the main lines of all my teaching. And in a certain way, it's the basis of the whole book, The Alchemy of Inner Work. Because what they say in this book is alchemy or transformation of our souls begin when we turn the light around. So they're talking about the light of awareness, the light of our attention. And they say the first step in change is looking within. And there's a line in that book that says, once you turn the light around, everything in the world is also turned around. And if you go to our website, what we have big time, our mission statement is inner work leads to outer change.
And your website is?
Oh, it's a new possibility.com. We're looking for a really different way to talk about health and to talk about healing.
Beautiful. And you okay, so that website's coming up on the screen. If you go to the description below, there's lots of links in the description and to the website and to your books as well. Now that website was started with your husband. And
yes, my husband Benjamin Fox.
Yeah, because he's on this book as well. What was his role in the book?
So Benjamin is a fellow alchemist. He's my collaborator, my husband, my best friend, and also at times my biggest, I don't want to say critic, but he keeps me honest. He keeps me honest, Benjamin. And we've worked together for 16 years developing what we call the Alchemical Healing Mentorship Training Program, which is in process now of moving online, like so many programs. We've got lots on the website, lots of ways people can learn and participate. But we had developed this work together. Benjamin's sort of a master community builder, master organizer, and he'd worked in nonprofit, and he's also an astrologer.
That's
so we brought our talents together.
He's an astrologer as well.
Yeah. Yes. And so he also is a stargazer and looking at, what's our paths in life. But he's not a writer. He is actually a very good writer, but he doesn't like me turn out hundreds of pages. It's like, he can write, like he loves to write like 2 or 3 pages, and I'm like in there. So I did most of the writing of the book. And we talk about it at the beginning, but every word in that book went through his eyes, his heart, to really, like I say, keep me honest, to keep it one of his tasks there. And our editor kind of knew that was to translate my way of talking, which is a little more esoteric, a little more I'm used to teaching professionals, into language that anyone who likes to read a book can pick this book up and use the skills and use the practices. And that's what we wanted. And Benjamin made sure that happened.
Right. So this book is for practitioners, but it's also for people who want to get into the work and are wanting to heal as well in the ways that you describe can be done through the practices that you put in the book as well.
Exactly. And actually, this particular book is more for what we call general readers than my other 2 books. 5 Spirits was my first book. It's about the psychology of Chinese medicine. which is a very beautiful mythical psychology. And that book's been out for, I think, 14 years, and it's still going strong. It's more directed to practitioners, although a lot of people read it. And Kigo, which came out in the fall, is about acupuncture points. So anyone who's interested in learning more about acupuncture points, the seasons, how they affect our health, could pick that book up. But it is very much directed to people who use the points, who use needles or touch, acupressure, even aromatherapy on points. That book would be of use to anyone in that domain. The Alchemy of Inner Work is our book that's for everyone. And that's coming out January 1st.
Oh, that's wow! Congratulations. Okay, but the book the book we're referring to today, that is out already. That's available right now.
Well, Alchemy of Inner Work is officially released January 1st, but it's going out. Amazon has it. All our friends are buying it, and anyone can buy it right now today, after this talk, or anytime they want to. Yep.
Well, congratulations. It's like giving birth, I guess. That's what some people refer to it, right? Because it takes a lot of work to put a book like that out. What would you say is the most important message of that book?
Of The Alchemy of Inner Work, for me, and I think for Benjamin as well, for us, I would say, our hope for this book is it supports people in turning that light inward, looking within in effective ways that actually promote real change inside. And then through that inner change, we can be more skillful in bringing healing to the outer world.
So I'm just going to say it again.
So inner work leads to outer change.
Yes. And I'm going to say it again because it's important. This was what stuck out at me as well. Inner healing is outer healing. And the outer healing could show up. I'm putting these words on here. The outer healing could show up as health, relationship, and wealth, and many more modalities.
Yes, and also just more friendliness, more love, more feeling of meaning in our relationships, not continuing to abuse ourselves, each other, and the planet. And that begins with, like you said to me, even when we spoke originally, taking responsibility for our own healing process. And that's what this book is about. I would say the other message, Kevin, of the book, which I also had mentioned when we talked earlier, the first principle of alchemy is this idea of lead to gold. So when the subtitle of the book, Transforming Illness and Suffering, that's our lead in alchemical terms. That's the base material that most of us just want to get rid of. Just like, okay, give me a pill, chop it off, fix it, Band-Aid it. But alchemical healing says, no, that lead holds within it the possibility of our real healing. We look for the gold in the dark places, the difficult places, the hidden places. That's what alchemists do.
Right. And do you think that anytime a soul incarnates, it's an automatic thing that we are going to need some sort of healing ongoing to ourselves because we're wearing this astronaut suit that is not our real nature of who we really are? It feels like it,
Kevin. I love that.
Yeah, it feels like it, but it's a self-imposed kind of amnesia to have this experience. So but I think the soul's.
But I might.
Yeah, go ahead.
I might just speak that slightly different than you. I love the astronaut suit idea. But the way I look at it is we come into the suit, we come into the body, because this is where the soul learns its lessons. What I always say to my students is we come down here being embodied. It's a given that we're going to suffer. It's a given that we're going to have loss. It's a given that we're going to have
because
old age.
The soul wanted it.
The soul comes here for these learnings. Otherwise, I always say, otherwise we just stay angels, we
Well,
wouldn't come down
yes, but
here.
some lives, you've met them as well, are more peaceful than others, and you could say that's more angel-like in a sense, right?
Mm,
But maybe
mm,
they've had a lot of past lives, if such things exist. Maybe they're happening now, or what, who knows? But maybe they've had other experiences elsewhere, maybe where they've had very traumatic stuff, and we can't judge that life.
absolutely.
They want a
I
life off.
totally agree with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Although I have to say, on the planet right now, there aren't too many people who are getting lives off. We're in tough, turbulent
Well, this is
times.
almost like if you wanted to get away from any of your issues, not right now. You don't get
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
It caught you up, and some people may say, I ain't got no issues. I'm happy where I'm at. This COVID thing's not affecting me, but it must affect people somewhere, even to a point where they get a chance to feel compassion for someone, maybe, that they never felt
Yes.
before for a stranger.
Beautiful. Exactly.
Maybe the little
And
things
compassion
sometimes.
is, yes.
Appreciation.
And that's the gold. Absolutely. All those qualities to the alchemist: compassion, gratitude, caring, appreciation. That's the soul growing right there.
And for others, it's a
And
hell of a lot worse.
yeah,
It's a lot
yes,
worse. It's a lot worse.
yes,
But
yes.
no judgment. You said earlier on that obviously your work is very in tune with the soul. But then I'm going to ask you, then who are you?
That's a wonderful question. I'm going to answer that by saying, telling a story. So when I think about my teachers in this lifetime, I think about my very first teacher, who was my uncle Paul, who was he was a amazing mystic. I was just blessed with having an uncle who was a mystic. He'd fought in the underground in France. Went back during the Second World War as a Jew. His wife and daughter were there because he was here translating texts from theosophy, these mystical texts. He was translating from English into French. But when the war broke out, he went back to France and he went down to Vichy. He got his wife and daughter into a convent, and he spent the war. He was an artist, and he spent the war counterfeiting papers so Jews could get out of France. And they left after the war and came to New York, and I grew up knowing him until I was 10 when he passed away. So just before he died, his wife had already died. He was at our house, and I came in early in the morning, and he was sitting in a chair with his eyes closed and his hands clasped in his lap. And I came and I sat in front of him, and he looked at me and he said, I'm going to teach you to meditate. And I looked at him. I adored this guy. And he looked at me and he said, all you do is you get quiet and you look inside your heart and you ask, who am I? Who am I? So that question, who am I, is a question that has been percolating through me since I've been 8. That answer, of course, changes every year, every day. But I would say what at core, the I that is me, the I that is you, the I that is any of us, is a speck of starlight that came down at the moment of conception, carried our whole morphic field, intention, what we call our Tao, our path, found a way to incarnate and become a human, and then is tasked with having this radiance move through me, move through you. And illness from this perspective, illness from the perspective I work from, is any way that radiance, that light, is blocked or dimmed or impeded or harmed. Our work is to bring that radiance back.
Could another word for that spark be love?
Mm. I think love is part of it. Yes.
Do you think sometimes when people say they're an atheist, or they don't have any religious belief, and they don't believe that we're a soul having a human experience, they think that they came from nothing, they grew consciousness, and they don't take their underpants with them and everything else, they just go and that's it, right? And that they could still be love without the need to quantify as a soul, and still have the same effects as the type of lives that you're trying to promote with the work that you do as well. There's many paths. That's what I'm
Mm.
saying.
Hmm. Yes, I think that the question, again, diagnostically, I would say as a clinician, I'm looking at, is this a life that has purpose? Is this a life where there's some warmth to the relationships? Relationships are really important. Purpose. And the other question I ask is this person's life, does it in some way seem to make sense for who they are? And if that's happening, then whatever you call it, love, the soul, the radiance, then I feel like that's health.
Or even taking all those words out and saying, if their belief is they're just here and it was just it just happened, with none of that religious stuff or spiritual stuff, that's still okay as well. I mean, I question this as well, obviously. How much, in your work discernment do you sort of apply as well to what you're putting out there?
In terms of what I will share with people?
Well, discernment in the sense that that's led you on the path that you are on. Discernment in the sense
Uh-huh.
that the work that the life's work that you've done as well.
Okay. Well, I would say discernment for me, what comes to me when you ask me that question, and like you say, leaving aside all the philosophy and all the spirituality and all of the judgment, for me, what I look for in a person that I might meet, or who might come into my treatment room, or I might be supervising, it's a practitioner, is what is that light? How is the light of that person shining?
And how much brighter
So,
did it shine when it left you as well?
well, of
Because
course, that's what I look
it would have
for.
shone brighter.
That's what
And
I look for.
really, is that not all that matters? Where people try to tear this work
Yes,
apart, it's you got there. However you got there, you still got there when you left the office.
exactly. I don't care if I have people come in and say, I don't believe in this stuff at all. And I'm like, great. I love people who don't believe in this stuff. I mean, that's immaterial. But yes, like you're saying, I mean, like when you and I, as soon as we started talking, it was like sparks. Like, yes, I'm interested in what you're saying. I'm looking at you. I'm seeing from my lens, like the fire element. It's like very bright. You're curious. You're expansive. You bring people in. All of that is what I'm looking at in meeting you and saying, oh, whatever you call it, Kevin's alive. He's in his life. And then I'll look for other things, like how is the quality of that fire doing now? Does it need to be calmed down? Does it need to be banked a little bit? Do we need to feed the fire? That's all what happens in an alchemical treatment. It's like you're in a laboratory and you're working with these amazing elements or essences of life.
I
I
would
know I
like
get a little
No, that's
overexcited, but I love
beautiful.
what I do.
That's that I love what you do, and other people will as well, because you're authentic with it, and you're there to help people, which is. I mean, most jobs help people, don't they? I mean, I bang on about this idea that living in purpose and being of service. Most jobs are of bloody service, but it's whether you're aware of that sometimes, I guess, as well. And are you
Mhm.
being of service to yourself in service sometimes with doing
Yes.
what you really want to do?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
but
Yes.
we'll maybe get into purpose a little bit. There's just I said this at the beginning of the interview. There's just so much to your work. I was like, oh my God, I need to get it back on. Um, yeah. Um, but when we talk about the soul, and when we talk about the ideas that me and yourself believe that we do have a soul, it does. I've always felt that it was a way to understand and make sense of things for me. Um,
Mm,
and if it gets me to where I need to be and to live my best version of myself, great. I think there's so much. I mean, when you say that the soul came here for experience, all I want to say to you really is, well, I bet there's so much more to it than that. But we that phrase,
mm,
that what sort of wording is here for experience. It's probably the best thing that we need right now. To go too deep into it, maybe we're not supposed to know.
mm,
I mean,
mm,
what if this was
mm,
life after death? What if we got it all wrong, and we're living something? I mean,
mm.
none of that really matters, right? Right? I'm sure it's not, right? But I'm just saying, when you think outside the box, maybe it comes to really what the core of your work is really, and let's get to present moment, because that's where the healing takes place, by staying grounded and
Right.
trying to just come into that. I mean, most of us can't even be in that, can we?
Yes, but I like what you're saying is like all those wonderful questions they're not superfluous. They're so important, but we still have to begin where we are. We still have, like you said, in the present moment.
Let's just go to present moment as well, because when there are disturbances, and when you're not in present moment, your work does deal with that, doesn't it? So for example, I'm smoking. I shouldn't be,
Yes.
right? I'm right now chewing nicotine gum, right? It's better than the
Yes.
smoking. I know that maybe I might have a few more, but why am I
Yes.
being self-destructive to myself when I know what it can do to me? That must be a
Yes.
form that I'm not wanting to self-love right now. But I
Yes.
represent many others with other addictions.
All of us,
So,
all of us have
ha-
things that we
yeah,
grapple with like that.
right. What have you found in your work that helps bring people back to balance in a sense? And yeah, I'll let you answer that first. Yeah.
Well, so what you're bringing up is such a perfect example of how I would approach the situation. People come in and they say, "Oh, can you put some needles in and make me stop want to smoke?" Or can you, and that used to be more, I think, and I felt like there's something about that that doesn't feel right to me. Because, yes, we can stop a pattern or a habit or sort of fix something. But unless we go down into the core place where the pattern begins, it's going to come back in some other way. So the way I approach a situation, I appreciate your being self-disclosing and being so honest about what you're working on, is that I would begin by saying, first of all, it's not like you're weak or that you're doing something bad to yourself or you don't love yourself. There's something that smoking is giving you. It's so lead to gold. It's like, what is in there? What is the gift and nicotine actually is a sacred herb, as you know. It was used in sacred rituals. So let's shift it around. So rather than saying it's your enemy, it's your problem, you've got to get rid of it, say, well, how has it supported you up until now? What has it provided you with? And given how I'm just now getting to know you a tiny bit, Kevin, I would say you're somebody who really you like connection. You like getting, connected to people. And sometimes cigarettes is a way you actually feel connected when you smoke. You feel like you're touching something, you're inhaling, you're taking in spirit. So I always begin with, well, let's thank the nicotine for what it's given you up until now. And then, let's work on the loss of letting go of a very old friend. I don't know how long you've smoked, but, you know, most people have these addictions for some time and they become part of us, friends. They take some of the hard feelings away. So you begin by thanking that herb, appreciating it, and then the process of saying goodbye to it. not just saying, oh, I hate this, it's dirty, it's bad, but rather we're going to make a shift because I want my life to actually reflect something different now. So what I tell people to do is actually do a real ritual with the nicotine. Like bless it, and really think about the things that it's given you and how you might be able to get those things differently. And so that's the idea of lead to gold. You start with something that you want to get rid of or you think is bad or you want to throw it away, and you look for what's the gifts in it.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. And also, I think as well, it can be another form of not wanting to deal with your emotions. I think it can numb a lot of things out, and
Yes.
and that gets to other issues as well. So, and there's other ways to numb this stuff out as well through drug use and all sorts of other things, right?
Yes.
And we're not talking about nicotine drugs. So, what is the most common problem clients come to you with?
Oh, people come to me with lots of different things. And I would say at this point, so much of my work, because my books and my teaching is very much focused on the soul emotional level. Most people now know that about me. There are acupuncturists who do fantastic work with more physical issues, back pain, injuries, digestive disturbances. Acupuncture works for all of those things. Mostly in my work, I'm looking at more psycho-emotional issues. So anxiety, depression, loss of purpose, seeking purpose, people who are going through life changes, big life changes, who know they have to leave a marriage and are having trouble leaving the marriage, or who know they have to leave a job. So we could say life transitions. I work with that a lot. And then many of the people I work with now are using our work as a way to really maximize. It's not even anymore a question of fixing or repairing, but it's like, how do I step in fully into my wholeness in this lifetime?
Thank you for that. And the one thing I forgot that I couldn't remember that I was going to ask you as well was when you mentioned earlier on in this interview that if we embrace the soul more in how we heal people, that could change so much. Because when you start embracing that idea, that it's more of a self-responsibility that, well, if we are a soul, then what I do to another, I do to myself, and vice versa sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so much to that,
Yes.
but that would have to be with free will that you want to go down that road as well. But yeah, that's what I was, yeah.
Yes. Well, the question of free will and the choices we make in a lifetime from an alchemical perspective, from the perspective of the alchemy of inner work, the book, the first step in all of it, okay, let me back up here just a tiny bit. We aren't in charge of the conditions of our life. An acorn doesn't say, I want to fall right over there in that beautiful open area. We find ourselves where we find ourselves. Where we have choice, that free will moment from this perspective is the decision to look inside of myself, to begin the practice of, asking the question, who am I? Who am I? And what have I come here for? So that's where free will comes in, because we can't determine the outcome necessarily. I don't believe that by changing my mind, I change my life right like that. I do believe we have free will to create conditions where change can occur. Just like you're doing. I mean, you're saying, okay, this is a pattern about my life that isn't serving me anymore. It worked, but at this point, it's not serving me. So I am going to start looking inside and investigating how I can make that different. For me, I would say we had talked about that chapter in the book, Repairing a Broken Marriage, for bringing together the splits, that dualism and mental consciousness, and the splitting of mind and body, the splitting of feminine and masculine that is so much of a wound of our times. But this idea of when we make choices in our lives and make the decision to turn the light around, when my real marriage came apart, which really was kind of the beginning of a lot of this journey for me. I had a 6-year-old daughter, and I was kind of all of a sudden on my own. I was splitting. I had no support at the time, and I had to figure it out. And at the beginning, I was so mad at my husband. It was all about, what he did and what he didn't do and how wrong he was. And I could have gone on and on about it. It got me nowhere. So in true alchemical fashion, it was only when, out of desperation, I said, wait a minute, I have to really look inside of me to turn that light around and begin to watch my dreams and begin to get to know myself better and do practices where I'm actually working with my own reactivity. Everything changed. I wrote a book. I met an incredible man. My daughter, I now am a grandmother of an incredible 18-month-old, and my ex-husband and I get along just fine. I like him. I think he's a great guy. I'm still glad I'm not married to him. He's glad he's not married to me, but we were each other's teachers. And the turning point came when I stopped blaming him, looking out there at everything else, or what it wasn't fair, or who did me wrong. But I did that magical thing. That's where the free will comes in. That's where I get to say, okay, if I start looking within and taking responsibility and doing these inner practices that we talk a lot about in the book, they're very concrete. There's real things that you can do to start looking inside. As the Taoists say, once you turn the light around, everything in the world also turns around.
So some of the practices that you're doing with the ancient Chinese medicine, is that still practiced at all in modern China, do you think?
Acupuncture is practiced in China widely, but it's practiced as a kind of a materialistic medicine, which that's one level of the medicine. They say the ancient texts say there's 3 levels to the medicine: the physical level, the psycho-emotional or soul level, and the spirit level. So in China now, they practice beautiful physical level Chinese medicine, and it works. It helps millions of people, but they do not practice the more subtle forms of the medicine. That is somewhat coming back with people beginning to do what's called Qigong. Chinese meditation practices are starting to come back in China a little bit. But here, they're widely practiced. Qigong and different ways of moving the life force within us.
Yes, and you promote that movement as well in your own practice.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. So
really important.
How would you sum up acupuncture then?
Well, acupuncture is a way to touch what we call the subtle vitalizing forces in our being. And you can touch every level of those vitalizing forces. You can work on, like what you call it, the space suit. We can do beautiful work. I had an injury in my calf. I tore a bit of a muscle, and my beloved acupuncturist, so I went to her, and I said, I tore this muscle, and she is an acupuncturist who works beautifully on the spacesuit level. And she went in and did some scar work and opened the chi so it moved through the scar. I mean, I was having a lot of pain in that. Like, I thought I won't be able to run anymore. Within 3 sessions, bingo, it left. And that was a year ago. And it never came back.
And the chi being the energy of the life force, the soul?
She is, yes. Yeah. So she was opening up the fibers of the muscles so this chi, this life force that Western medicine doesn't really recognize as part of us, could move. So that's like working on the spacesuit level.
It recognizes it in most hospitals. Like when someone's passing, they keep the window open. So
Yeah.
that's recognized, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but no. Do you think if it was embodied more into medicine and in modern care, that it would make a big difference? And do you see a future where it could go that way?
Well, in the book, I talk about a conversation I had with a good friend, Dr. Catherine Rensenbrink. She's my walking partner up in Maine when we're up in Maine. And we just talk. She talks Western medicine, I talk Chinese medicine, we talk psychology. Anyway, one day she said something to me, which I quote in the book, and she said, we Western doctors are being asked to do way too much. We're being asked to do everything from every level of illness. And she said, we know what we're good at. I totally would never go to an acupuncturist if I had appendicitis. I wouldn't go to an acupuncturist if I had, an infection, antibiotics, surgery, working on the physical level. Western medicine is incredible. But as Catherine said to me, she said, when I'm trying to talk to a person about making a lifestyle change, smoking, eating differently, I can tell them what to do, but I can't work with them to begin to change what the climate, the matrix of their being is, because that's not my training, the soul level. And she said, it's not even what I want to do. I want to be able to have other people to send them to. So I think that what's needed is a kind of interrelatedness, not that they become one, not that Western doctors become workers of the soul and workers of the soul become Western doctors, but rather that there's a mutuality. And I do feel, and Catherine even said, she said, half the symptoms that I'm called to work with are lifestyle issues. Like if people could start to care about their bodies, care about their lives, these wouldn't be symptoms that I'd be dealing with, would save millions of dollars.
Almost like a body mind.
But Western medicine,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. It's almost like a body, mind, spirit, and science combination.
Yeah. But we kind of have to understand what each other does and what our scope of practice is and how they can mutually support each other. And, unfortunately, given the world we live in, insurance companies, the whole infrastructure would have to begin to appreciate that the soul is part of the healing process. If you leave the soul and the spirit out, you're going to have sick people.
I should have asked you this at the beginning, but if you were to sum up alchemy and chemical alchemy, just very, very quickly, just so that if people are confused by those words.
Sure. So alchemy was the way that human beings came to understand the world and themselves for thousands of years before the advent of modern science, which is really, we'd say, 500 years old. The medicine and the science that we call Western medicine, Western science, began in the Renaissance. Alchemy extends, in fact, many scientists, Newton and Galileo, they were also alchemists because alchemy was still going on into the 1700s. But it extends back to ancient Egypt. And alchemy, we could say that the fundamental difference between an alchemical view and a modern scientific view is that alchemists don't separate spirit and matter. They included the soul as part of their investigation of the world. After Descartes, as we all know, I think, therefore I am, the mind was separated from the body. And when we talk in the book about repairing a broken marriage, that's the marriage we're talking about. And alchemy is a way to bring soul, spirit, and body back into relationship. That is their goal. And to recognize divinity not as something way up there that we can never know, but that is actually the essence of our being. That's the search of alchemy.
And alchemical healing?
Yes. So alchemical healing is a form of healing that I wouldn't say I own alchemical healing, but it is there's a way of working that I have spent years and years articulating, writing about, defining. And basically, it is a form of healing that recognizes the soul as a central part of the healing process and includes not just working on the physical body and not just working on the ephemeral spirit level, but the interface between spirit and our bodies through our dreams, through what I call inner sensing, paying attention to how our body's responding, learning to recognize symbols that show up in our lives, synchronicities. Again, we talk about all this in the book, but it is so how do we repair this marriage? How do we bring spirit, soul, and body back into relationship in search of our own wholeness? That's what alchemical healing's all about.
Absolutely. And again, people can get a session with yourself. Now, some people may be thinking, well, a lot of this sounds like you have to be in person, with a lot of this healing modalities, but, a lot of it can be done online, because I guess you've had to learn to adapt to be online as well.
I do a lot of work online. In fact, at this point right now, currently, everything is virtual. Acupuncturists are seeing patients, but for me at this time, I'm not seeing people in person. I will again, I'm sure. But what people can do, even beyond working with me, is come to our website. And we have a network. We have a New Possibility network, which people can join. And we've created it so people can come in and learn more about alchemical healing. All they have to do is come to the website, newpossibility.com, and there's invitations, and they can look at videos of me and Benjamin talking about our work. And we're inviting people to come in. We have open forums every month to talk about just these tools that you and I have been talking about, taking ideas from the book and people sharing how they're using them, how they're working for them, questions about them. Because even though I'd love to work with every human being on the planet, obviously I can't. And even all my students, we do have a practitioners directory in there too that they can search, find people who really do this work. But the most important thing is that each of us learns to do it for ourselves, that it becomes a lifestyle.
Absolutely. And I know you've got to get going right now. We're over time right now. And just one final thing, leading on from just that, which is really important. Now, obviously in the book, you talk about the practices that you can do, but one part of your practice, one big part of it is just to begin with silence. If you want to speak to your soul, if you want to listen to that, and when your soul speaks back to you sometimes, it can just be that voice in your head, your own voice coming back to you, but you'll know it's a much wiser and loving aspect of you because it just is. So you got to trust that voice, right, when you ask a question, but begin with a pause is what you do. And I guess that's a bit like meditation.
Yeah. Kevin, you said that so beautifully. It begins with making a space that spirit can come into. If we don't make that space, that magic won't happen. And yeah, I love how you put it. It could be as much as just suddenly your own voice, but you recognize it because it has clarity. It's like, oh, I mean, for me, sometimes I get these goosebumps and I know that's the voice. But if you do it, you'll begin to know that's it. That's it. And synchronicities where these interesting coincidences can happen, or you'll have a dream. These are all ways that I say the spirit is talking to us.
And I should have said
Yeah.
as well, there's many modalities you work with, dreams being one of them, poetry. There's many things you do, which, you'll find on the website.
Mhm.
Wow. God, there's so much more we could have talked about and discussed. I mean, there really is a lot. And even just to unpack the book, but I hope this was helpful to people. And I found it very enjoyable to have you here. And I really, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for what you're doing, Kevin. Really, thank you. It's wonderful to get to meet you, and we will continue as collaborators on the path here on this beautiful planet.
Absolutely. Well, Lorie, thank you
Thanks
so,
again
so
for
much.
having me on the show.
Thank you.